I'm Natalie. Standing here at the groundbreaking ceremony of the Skyline Tower project, watching as my so-called family is being taken away in handcuffs, a wave of emotions washes over me. It's a bittersweet moment, a culmination of years of pain, betrayal, and finally, justice. My family, the Andersons, were once a well-known name in the construction business. My father, Henry Anderson, was the face of Anderson Construction. He was a charming man in public, always with a big smile and grand plans. But behind closed doors, he was a gambler and a spendthrift. He would make deals without thinking through the consequences, leaving the company on the brink of collapse time and time again. My mother, Victoria Anderson, was a socialite. She cared more about her image and the luxurious lifestyle than the well-being of her family. She was cold and calculating, always ready to sacrifice me for the sake of the family name. And my brother Ethan was the golden child. He had a silver tongue and knew how to charm investors. But he was also lazy and incompetent when it came to the actual work of construction. I, on the other hand, was the silent worker. I was a 28-year-old structural engineer. I had always been passionate about building things, about making sure structures were safe and sound. I had gotten into a top-tier engineering school, but my dreams were shattered when my father's company started to fall apart. It was a fateful day when I was sitting in a lecture hall, completely engrossed in my studies. My mother called me, her voice filled with panic. "Natalie, you need to come home right away. Your father's company is in big trouble. The inspectors are threatening to shut down the stadium project, and we need someone who can handle the numbers without talking to the press." I didn't hesitate. I packed my bags that night, withdrew from my classes, and flew back to the city. I thought it would be a short-term solution, but little did I know it would be the start of a 7-year nightmare. When I arrived, the company was in shambles. My father was drunk in his office, and Ethan was driving around in a fancy car paid for by the company, talking about marketing and branding. But he couldn't even read a basic blueprint. My father put me in a rundown trailer on the construction site. "It's better this way, Natalie. If the investors see a young girl in charge of engineering, they'll pull out. You do the work, and Ethan will present it. He's the face, and you're the support." For 7 long years, I lived in that trailer. I woke up at 4 a.m. every day, drank coffee that tasted like poison, and dealt with union foremen who looked down on me. But I was good at my job. I fixed safety issues before the inspectors came, renegotiated contracts with suppliers, and redrew the blueprints my father scribbled on napkins. One winter, we were working on a high-rise downtown. It was freezing, and the heater in my trailer broke. But my father said there was no money to fix it because Ethan needed a new suit for a press conference. I sat there, shivering, redrawing the HVAC schematics by hand because the software license had expired. Ethan walked in, smelling of expensive cologne. He looked around the trailer with disgust. "Is it done?" he asked, not even caring about my well-being. "Almost," I said, my voice trembling from the cold. The load calculations on the east wall were off. If we build it as planned, the whole structure could be at risk. He grabbed the papers from my desk. "Just give it to me. The investors are waiting." And then he left, slamming the door behind him. I watched him drive away in his warm car, going to a fancy lunch while I was left to freeze. But I kept working. I did it for the workers who needed their jobs, for the people who would live in these buildings, and stupidly, for my family. I hoped that one day, they would recognize my hard work. The turning point came with the Skyline Tower project. It was supposed to be a revolutionary green energy building, my design. I had spent months working on it, while Ethan was off on vacations. One night, we had a party to celebrate the project. I was standing in the corner, holding a glass of water, watching as Ethan stood in the center, raising a toast. I thought, just for a second, that he might thank me. But instead, he smirked and said, "And let's not forget my little sister Natalie." Maybe she'll finally find a real job after this. The room erupted in laughter. My mother covered her mouth to hide her smile, and my father shook his head, looking at me like I was a disappointment. That was the moment I realized that they would never appreciate me. I walked out of the penthouse and took the stairs. With each step, I felt the anger and pain building inside me. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts and calls. Ethan was demanding the final CAD files for the Skyline Tower. My mother was pressuring me to sign over the intellectual property rights. "It's the company's design," she said coldly. "You work for the company." I refused. And then, I found out that Ethan had fired my entire crew. He was blackmailing me, saying he would hire them back if I signed the papers. I knew I couldn't let them get away with it. I logged into the company's secure server and downloaded all the evidence. I found out that they were planning to use a rejected, dangerous draft of the Skyline Tower plans to save money. And they were going to forge my signature on the permit application. I decided to take a stand. I went to see Amelia Reed, the biggest competitor in the city. She was a tough, no-nonsense woman who had left my father's company years ago because he had stolen her work. I walked into her office, holding an external hard drive with all the evidence. "I'm Natalie Anderson, and I need your help," I said. Amelia looked at me for a long time. "I've heard about you. You're the one doing all the real work in that company, aren't you?" I showed her the files, and her eyes widened. "This is serious, Natalie. If they build this tower with these plans, people will die." She offered me a partnership. "I want you to be a senior structural engineer here, and you'll get 5% equity in the firm. And your name will be on every project you work on." I accepted. But I knew I couldn't just let my family get away with their crimes. As the days passed, I kept an eye on the permit application for the Skyline Tower. One night, I checked the City of Chicago Department of Buildings portal and my heart stopped. The permit had been approved. I downloaded the plans and found that they had used the dangerous draft and forged my signature. I felt sick to my stomach. I called Amelia, and she immediately called Inspector Ryan, the head of the Structural Safety Board. We spent the next 2 days building a digital twin of the Skyline Tower based on the forged plans. We ran simulations, and it was clear that the tower would collapse in high winds. On the day of the groundbreaking ceremony, I arrived with Amelia and Inspector Ryan. The site was filled with investors, the press, and the mayor. Ethan was at the microphone, talking about the safety and sustainability of the tower. I walked onto the site, and the crowd fell silent. Ethan saw me and tried to brush me off, but I wasn't going to be silenced. I stepped up to the microphone and said, "My name is Natalie Anderson, and I am the structural engineer for this project. The permits that were submitted are forged. The plans use substandard steel, and if this tower is built, it will collapse within 5 years." Ethan screamed that I was lying, but I held up the hard drive with the evidence. Amelia stepped forward and said, "I have reviewed the files, and these plans are a disaster waiting to happen." Inspector Ryan then announced that they were under arrest for fraud, forgery, and reckless endangerment. The color drained from Ethan's face, and my mother started screaming. As I watched them being led away, I felt a sense of relief. I had finally stood up for myself. I had exposed their lies and protected the public from a potential disaster. The fallout was huge. The Anderson Construction Company was dissolved. My father lost his architecture license, and Ethan was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. My mother tried to call me a few months later, but I blocked her number. I didn't need her apology or her approval. Now, I'm sitting in my new office at Reed and Anderson Architects. I look out the window and see the cranes rising for a new project, one that I designed with honesty and integrity. I pick up my notary stamp, Natalie Anderson, partner, Reed and Anderson Architects, and press it down on a piece of paper. It's a symbol of my new beginning, of the architect I've become. I'm no longer the hidden workhorse, I'm the one in charge, and I'm just getting started.